After Tiffany asked me multiple times, I finally agreed to marry her. The night we got our marriage certificate, I received a video from an anonymous source. In the video, Tiffany was kneeling on the marble floor of a mall atrium, in front of a man in a white shirt. "Calvin, I was wrong. Please don't leave me," she said. Her voice echoed in the empty mall. A crowd was filming and making a scene with comments flashing in live streams. "Kneeling for another guy on her wedding day, what a jerk. Who's Calvin? Wasn't Tiffany just married today? Place your bets on who she'll spend the night with." I watched Tiffany's submissive demeanor in the video and suddenly recalled her words when she first proposed to me. "Billy, you're the only man I'll ever kneel for in my life." Yet, there she was, kneeling before someone else. I put down my phone, walked to the safe, and took out the stock transfer agreement Tiffany signed when she first proposed. To show her sincerity, she had signed it herself. If she ever betrayed me, all her company shares would transfer to my name. I signed my name on the agreement. This marriage was going to pay the price from day one. My phone rang. It was Tiffany. "I might not make it home tonight," she said, sounding tired. "There's an urgent project at work." I glanced at the video timestamp. It was just 10 minutes ago. "That's tough," I replied calmly. "Tomorrow I'll make it up to you. I've already booked our honeymoon trip, a presidential suite in the Maldives." "Okay," I responded briefly. After hanging up, I texted a private investigator. "Start the operation." Since she chose to deceive me, she can't blame me for being harsh. The next morning, Tiffany came home with a large bouquet of roses, still looking exhausted. "Honey, last night was so busy, I didn't even sleep," she said, kissing my cheek. "Did you miss me?" I picked up my coffee mug and looked at her indifferently. "I did. That's good." She sighed in relief. "Oh, by the way, we have a new designer at the company, named Calvin. He stayed up with me last night working on the project. He's a nice guy." Hearing that name caused my hand to tremble slightly. She actually dared to mention him to me. "Really?" I put down the coffee cup. "When do I get to meet him?" Tiffany's eyes flickered with panic, but she quickly composed herself. "He's a bit shy, maybe another time." "Okay." I got up to head to the law firm. "I might be home late today. I've got an important case to handle." "What kind of case is so important?" "A stock dispute." I looked into her eyes. "The kind that involves enough money to bankrupt a company." Tiffany's face turned slightly pale. I whispered in her ear, "People should be honest. Otherwise, there are consequences." With that, I left without looking back. At the firm, my assistant Thomas handed me a report. "Billy, here's all the info you requested." I opened the report, which detailed Tiffany's timeline with Calvin. Turns out it started 3 months ago, and here I was, a fool all along. The last page of the report read, "Calvin, 26, interior designer, unmarried, currently in an inappropriate relationship with Tiffany. Last night they argued at the W Mall atrium, where Tiffany knelt in public." I closed the report and downed the whiskey on my desk in one gulp. "Tiffany, since you like kneeling in malls, I'll make sure you get your fill." At 3 p.m., I showed up at W Mall. It was a rendezvous spot for Tiffany and Calvin, and also where she knelt last night. I went to the mall security office, flashed my lawyer ID, and requested to view the surveillance footage from last night, citing it involved an important case. The security lead, after verifying my ID, cooperatively pulled up the footage. In the footage, Tiffany and Calvin were arguing outside a jewelry store. "Calvin, listen to me, it's just a marriage of convenience. You're the only man I love," Tiffany pleaded, holding Calvin's hand. "Then why marry him?" Calvin retorted, shaking her hand off with disappointment in his eyes. "The company needs funds, his family has money," Tiffany replied, chilling me to the core. "Once the company stabilizes, I'll divorce him and marry you." "I don't believe you," Calvin said, trying to leave. In desperation, Tiffany knelt. "Calvin, I swear, you're the only one I truly love. If I'm lying, may I be struck by lightning." The crowd grew, with some filming, others gossiping. "Isn't she the boss of TF Group?" One bystander whispered. "Yeah, she was trending yesterday for marrying that hotshot lawyer Billy. And now she's cheating? Such a scumbag." At this point, I asked the security lead for a copy of the video. These are evidence I need to take them. Leaving the security office, I walked to the jewelry store. The clerk recognized me. Billy, you're here. The watch Tiffany ordered for you is ready. I paused, puzzled. What watch? The Rolex, she said enthusiastically. Tiffany wanted to surprise you but had a bit of a scene with another guy yesterday. I smirked inwardly, but feigned interest. Oh? What kind of scene? The guy was mad when he saw the watch was for you. Called Tiffany a liar. She ended up kneeling to calm him down. The clerk gossiped. Eventually, Tiffany ordered him 1, 2 identical watches. To Tiffany, no difference between me and him. I don't want the watch, I said, leaving. Keep the money as a tip. Walking out of the jewelry store, my phone buzzed. It was Tiffany calling. Where are you? Her voice sounded a bit anxious. At the mall, buying you a present. What's up with you? I glanced at the bustling crowd. Not much, just missing you. Really? I walked to the spot where she had knelt the night before. Can you come be with me? Well, Tiffany hesitated. I'm in a meeting with a client right now. What kind of client? I asked. It's a design project. The client is a bit difficult. I chuckled. Tiffany, do you know the cost of lying? What do you mean? Her voice trembled slightly. Nothing, I said, and hung up. Standing at the very place she knelt for another man, it all seemed so ridiculous to me now. 5 years of what I thought was a relationship turned out to be a scam. I pulled out my phone and texted the private investigator. Execute Plan B. He replied quickly, received. Task will be completed. I checked the time. 2 hours left before Tiffany would get a special delivery. And I had a meeting with someone else. Someone who could help me completely destroy Tiffany. I headed to the mall's cafe where a middle-aged woman sat. She was Tiffany's competitor, the person I was there to see. Lily, it's an honor to meet you. I sat across from her. Lily looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Billy, I didn't expect you to reach out. I have a business proposition. I pulled out a document about TF Group. Lily took the document, her expression growing more intrigued as she read. Billy, are these documents legit? They are. I cut in. TF Group's cash flow is about to crash. If someone gives them a push right now, I understand. Lily closed the file. What do you want me to do, Billy? Tomorrow morning, TF Group has a board meeting to discuss new financing plans. I locked eyes with her. I need you there. As what? Creditor. I handed over another document. This is a debt list TF Group owes your company, totaling $300 million. Lily scanned the papers, clearly surprised. Billy, this, all legitimate debts with contracts and evidence. I said calmly, tomorrow all you need to do is show up and demand repayment. What if they can't pay? She asked. Then apply for bankruptcy and liquidation. I stood up. Then you can acquire their premium assets for a bargain. Lily's eyes lit up. It's quite the plan. To a successful partnership. I extended my hand. Lily shook it. Billy, you're going all in on Tiffany. She owes me. It's time she pays. Leaving the cafe, I checked the time. 1 more hour until the big show starts. At 7 p.m. sharp, I arrived home. Tiffany was already in the living room, looking uneasy. Billy, we need to talk. Her voice was serious. About what? I set my bag down, casually taking a seat on the sofa. Someone sent me these pictures. Tiffany showed me her phone, showing photos of me meeting Lily at the cafe. I glanced at them, confirming they were from today. So? I said, keeping my tone even. Lily's my rival. Why did you meet her? Tiffany's eyes burned with anger. Are you hiding something from me? I couldn't help but laugh. Tiffany, are you questioning me? I stood up, stared directly at her. What right do you have? I'm your wife. Of course I have that right. Wife. I pulled out my phone and played a video from last night's mall surveillance. Is this how you act as a wife? Seeing the footage, Tiffany went pale. Billy, let me explain. Explain what? I interrupted. Explain why you knelt before another man on our wedding day? Or why you bought him a watch identical to mine? Or why, in front of so many people, you confessed that you married me for money? Tiffany opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. Tiffany, the moment you chose to betray me, this game started. I walked over to the safe and took out a stock transfer agreement. Remember this? Seeing the agreement, her face turned even worse. It's already in effect. I placed it on the coffee table. From today, all TF Group stock belongs to me. It can't be. Tiffany rushed to grab the agreement. I never agreed to transfer it. You did. I showed her another document. Here's the recording from last night in the mall. You admitted marrying me for money, which is the betrayal condition stated in the agreement. Tiffany stared at the recording, utterly stunned. Billy, this is revenge. You're right. I looked at her frightened expression. What did you think? Betrayal comes without consequences? Then why meet with Lily? Because tomorrow TF Group goes bankrupt. I handed over the debt list. Here's the debt your company owes Lily's, totaling $300 million. Tomorrow, Lily will demand immediate repayment. Tiffany snatched the list and scanned it, looking worse and worse. Some of these debts are fake. Which one is fake? I asked coldly. Every single one has a contract, a transfer record, and your company's seal. Tiffany desperately looked through all the documents but couldn't find a single discrepancy. The debts were indeed real. I had just used various means to delay them. But now, I concentrated all the debts under Lily's name for collection at once. Billy, you can't do this. Tiffany fell to her knees. The company is my life's work. You can't destroy it. Your life's work? I looked down at her. What about mine? 5 years of thinking it was real, only to discover it was all a lie. Doesn't my effort count? I know I messed up, I really do. Tiffany clung to my leg. I broke up with Calvin. Can we start over? Too late. I shook her off. Tiffany, remember, there are things in this world, once lost, you can't get back. Like trust, like love. Tiffany slumped to the floor, her eyes full of despair. Billy, please, give me another chance. A chance? I said as I prepared to leave. You've used up all your chances. When I got to the door, I looked back at her. Oh, by the way, tomorrow at 9 a.m., see you at the board meeting. Bring Calvin along. Let him watch his woman go bankrupt. With that, I walked out without looking back. Behind me, Tiffany's cries echoed, but my heart didn't feel one bit of sympathy. She chose betrayal, so she must face the consequences. And this, well, it's just the beginning. I drove to the hotel and checked in at the front desk. Give me your best suite, I told the receptionist. Sure, Billy. She handed me the room card politely. Your suite is on the 28th floor. If you need anything, just let us know. In the elevator, I looked at myself in the mirror. 5 years ago, that Billy thought love could conquer anything. Now, today's Billy was calm and rational, knowing that only strength can protect you. Tiffany, thank you for making me grow. But we're not done yet. The next morning at 8:30, I was promptly in front of the TF Group building. I made sure to wear a black suit today, with my hair perfectly combed. I looked like I was there to deliver a death sentence. Lily's car pulled up as well, and she brought a team of lawyers. Billy, are you ready? Lily asked as she walked over. Of course. I checked my watch. In 20 minutes, the show would begin. Inside the TF Group building, the receptionist looked surprised to see me. Billy, you're here, she said respectfully. Tiffany is waiting for you upstairs. I know. I headed straight to the elevator. At the boardroom door, I could hear arguing inside. Tiffany, the company's cash flow is really tight, the financial director's voice said. We need to find new investors quickly. Another director chimed in. Hearing Calvin's name, I pushed the door open. The room went silent. Everyone looked at me. Tiffany was at the head of the table, looking exhausted with red eyes. Next to her sat a young, handsome man, Calvin. Apologies for being late, I said, walking to the table. What's on the agenda right now? Billy, what are you doing here? Tiffany stood up, sounding panicked. Why can't I be here? I pulled out the share transfer agreement. As the new majority shareholder of TF Group, I have the right to attend the board meeting. The room erupted into whispers. What? Majority shareholder? Tiffany, what's going on? Tiffany's face turned even paler, but she forced herself to speak. This is just a misunderstanding. Billy's joking with me. Joking? I placed the agreement on the table. This is a notarized share transfer agreement. It's legally binding. As of yesterday, I am the largest shareholder of TF Group. The financial director took the agreement, his face changing immediately. This is real. Tiffany, did you really transfer your shares to Billy? A board member asked. Tiffany opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Since I'm a shareholder, I propose we replace the chairman. I scanned the room. Anyone in favor? I agree. The financial director was the first to raise his hand. I agree. Others followed. Soon, everyone except Tiffany and Calvin had their hands up. All right, from now on, I am the new chairman of TF Group, I said, sitting at the head of the table. Now, let's discuss the first topic, the company's debt issue. As I spoke, the meeting room door opened, and Lily walked in with her lawyer team. Sorry to interrupt, Lily said politely. I'm Lily, here to discuss some debt issues with TF Group. Tiffany saw Lily and turned pale. Lily, why are you here? Tiffany, there's a debt between us, Lily said, pulling out a debt list. A total of $300 million, which we now demand your company repay immediately. Hearing the $300 million figure, the directors were all stunned. $300 million. We don't have $300 million in debt, the financial director quickly said. Each debt has a contract and proof. Lily's lawyer distributed the documents. Please take a look. Tiffany took the document, her hands trembling. She remembered these debts, but there were extensions previously. Why demand repayment all at once now? Lily, these debts have extension agreements, Tiffany tried to explain. The extensions have expired, Lily said coldly. And according to the contract, if it's not repaid when due, we have the right to demand full repayment immediately. But our company only has $50 million in liquid assets, the financial director said. Then declare bankruptcy, I said calmly. The company can't operate anymore anyway. No, Tiffany jumped up. The company can't go bankrupt. Then do you have a better suggestion? I looked at her. How do you plan to pay this $300 million debt back? Tiffany looked at Calvin for help. Calvin stood up. I have a project that can save the company, he said confidently. What project? I asked, intrigued. A large-scale commercial complex design project. Total value of $1 billion, profits at least $300 million. Calvin said confidently. I'm almost done negotiating with the client. Is that so? I said, pulling out my phone. Let me call the client to confirm. I dialed a number. Hey, Leo, it's Billy. A man's voice came through the phone. Billy, what's up? I just want to confirm. Has the design contract between you and Calvin been signed? Calvin? The person on the other end was confused. Billy, we've never worked with anyone named Calvin. Our design contract is with you, remember? The whole meeting room went silent. Calvin's face turned ghostly pale. I hung up and smiled at him. Calvin, this project of yours is quite interesting. Calvin slumped in his chair, speechless, looking as white as a sheet. He stammered, struggling to form a complete sentence. Tiffany jumped in. There must be some misunderstanding. Calvin wouldn't lie to me. Misunderstanding? I chuckled coldly. Tiffany, your boyfriend deceived you with a fake project. And you call that a misunderstanding? Hearing the word boyfriend, the directors all looked shocked. Tiffany, is this Calvin of yours? The CFO asked cautiously. Tiffany's face turned beet red. It was clear she wanted to explain but didn't know how. Everyone, let me introduce you. I stood up. This is Mr. Calvin, Tiffany's lover. On the day of our wedding, Tiffany was kneeling in a mall begging for his forgiveness. I then played the surveillance footage on my phone, showing Tiffany kneeling and pleading with Calvin, leaving the meeting room in stunned silence. Tiffany, what is this? A director asked, unable to believe it. Now you all understand, right? I said, closing my phone. Not only did Tiffany betray her husband, but she also tried to deceive the board with a bogus project. Is someone like this fit to be our chairperson? I moved to remove Tiffany from her position as chairperson. The CFO was the first to stand up. I second that motion. Agreed. Soon, everyone except Tiffany and Calvin raised their hands. Well, motion passed. I declared. MS. Tiffany, you're removed. Tiffany slumped in her chair, eyes full of despair. Billy, you can't do this, she tried to make one last effort. I can. I pulled out a new document. This is the new board resolution for TF Group. Given the severe debt crisis, the board has decided to introduce strategic investors. Lily stood up at the right moment. I'm willing to invest in TF Group to help the company through this tough time. What are Lily's terms for the investment? I asked. I'm willing to invest $500 million for 60% of TF Group's equity, Lily said. On hearing this condition, Tiffany stood abruptly. No way. That's exploiting the situation. You're no longer the chairperson, you have no say. I said coldly, besides Lily's investment, do you have another option? Tiffany looked at the other board members for support, but everyone avoided her gaze. Board members, any opinions on Lily's investment? I asked. I think it's good. At least the company will survive, the CFO said. I agree. Agreed. Soon, the investment agreement was approved. Lily's lawyer brought out the prepared contract. Please sign, board members. Watching each director sign the contract, despairing tears welled up in Tiffany's eyes. The company she built was taken away by me just like that. Billy, you won. Tiffany said weakly, are you satisfied? Satisfied? I walked up to her. Tiffany, this is just the beginning. With that, I took out another document. What's this? Tiffany asked, trembling as she took it. A lawsuit, I said calmly. I'm suing you and Calvin for fraud and bigamy. Bigamy? Tiffany looked at me confused. Have you forgotten? I took out a photo. This is a picture of you and Calvin at the civil office holding marriage certificates. Tiffany took the photo, her face turning stark white. In the photo, she and Calvin were at the civil office holding red documents. But she recalled they went there to get certification, not to marry. This photo is fake, Tiffany said quickly. Fake or not, the judge will decide. I took back the photo. Even if it's fake, your relationship with him constitutes bigamy. Calvin finally couldn't hold back and yelled, Billy, why are you being so harsh? Harsh? I looked at him. Calvin, did you destroy my marriage first? Or did I ruin your relationship? Calvin was at a loss for words. Moreover, regarding your identity, I have some interesting findings. I pulled out another document. Calvin, born Tim, was convicted of fraud 3 years ago, served his time, and changed his name to Calvin after his release. Everyone was shocked upon hearing this. Tiffany looked at Calvin in disbelief. Is that true? Calvin lowered his head, not daring to respond. Tiffany, you sure have a keen eye, I said sarcastically. You gave up a 5-year marriage for a convicted conman. Tiffany completely broke down, holding her head and crying. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Wrong? I looked down at her. Tiffany, some mistakes, once made, can't be undone. With that, I turned and left the meeting room. Tiffany's painful sobs lingered, but my heart felt nothing. This is the price of betrayal. And this revenge was far from over. As I stepped out of the TF Group building, my phone rang. It was my assistant, Thomas. Billy, I found everything you wanted, Thomas said excitedly. You won't believe what we discovered. Tell me, I said as I got into my car, ready to return to the law firm. Calvin not only has a fraud record, but he's also married. His wife's name is Vivian, and they're not divorced yet, Thomas said. When I heard the news, I was stunned for a moment. Are you sure? Absolutely. I've already contacted Vivian herself. Thomas said she mentioned that Calvin went missing 3 years ago and hadn't been heard from since. She just found out he's with Tiffany now, and she's furious and wants to meet you. Arrange to meet her tomorrow morning. I said, let's set the address at the cafe in W Mall. Got it, Billy. Hanging up, I couldn't help but smirk. Calvin, your cards are getting more interesting. Back at the law firm, I started preparing for tomorrow's talk. If Vivian really is Calvin's wife, then his relationship with Tiffany is more than just cheating. Could be about bigamy, and bigamy can lead to jail time. The next morning, I showed up at the cafe in W Mall right on time. It wasn't long before a middle-aged woman walked over. Are you Billy? She seemed nervous. I'm Vivian. Please have a seat. I motioned for her to sit down. So you're Calvin's wife? Yes. Vivian nodded. We got married 3 years ago, but he disappeared soon after, and I've heard nothing since. Do you have a marriage certificate? Vivian pulled out a red document. This is our marriage certificate. I took a look and it was legit. Do you know what Calvin is up to now? I heard he's with someone named Tiffany. Vivian's voice was angry. This is a betrayal of our marriage. It's more than that. I took out my phone, showing her some photos. He's trying to marry Tiffany too. Seeing the photos, Vivian's face turned red with fury. That bastard. She slammed the table. He dares to commit bigamy. If you're willing to testify, I can help you sue Calvin for bigamy. I said. Of course. Vivian agreed without hesitation. I want him to pay the price. As we were speaking, two familiar figures appeared at the cafe door. Tiffany and Calvin walked in hand. Seeing me, Tiffany froze, then tried to pull Calvin to leave. Tiffany, since you're here, why not join us? I called out loudly. Tiffany had no choice but to come over. Billy, what are you doing here? I'm here discussing something with a friend. I glanced at Vivian. Want to say hi? Vivian stood up, glaring at Calvin. Tim, you finally show up. Hearing the name, Calvin's face turned pale instantly. You? He stammered, backing away. I'm your wife, Vivian. Vivian said loudly. You disappeared for 3 years, only to be someone else's lover. Hearing wife, Tiffany was completely stunned. Calvin, what's she saying? Tiffany asked. Calvin wanted to explain, but the words wouldn't come out. He didn't tell you? Vivian sneered. We got married 3 years ago and are still legally married now. Then Vivian showed Tiffany the marriage certificate. Tiffany took the certificate, and her face turned ashen. Calvin, is this true? Her voice shook. Tiffany, I can explain. Explain what? Tiffany's voice suddenly turned loud. Explain that you're a married man? Explain how you've been deceiving me? Other cafe patrons started looking our way, and some began taking videos. Ma'am, please don't cause a disturbance here. A server walked over. But Tiffany didn't care. She glared at Calvin with teary eyes. 3 years. 3 years with you. You never once told me you were married. Tiffany, listen to me. Calvin tried to grab Tiffany's hand. Tiffany shook him off. Explain what? How you tricked me. Or about your fraud record. At the mention of a fraud record, the observing crowd buzzed with gossip. This guy has a record? Looks handsome but turns out to be a con man. That woman seems to be from TF Group, and she's been duped badly. Unable to bear the murmurs, Calvin turned and tried to run. But Vivian blocked his way. Running away? Vivian sneered. Tim, you still owe me. A what? Tiffany asked. Before we got married, he borrowed $500,000 from me, claiming it was for investment, but he stole it all. Vivian said, now with interest, it's at least $1 million. Hearing this number, Tiffany was utterly crushed. She eyed Calvin, filled with hatred. So from the start, you were just conning me? Her voice was calm, but beneath the calm lay a terrible fury. My company is bankrupt. My marriage is ruined. All for a scammer? Calvin was lost for words. Tiffany suddenly laughed, but it was a hollow laugh. Billy, you win. She looked at me, you totally win. I was never in any competition with you. I said quietly, you chose this path yourself. Tiffany nodded, then turned and left the cafe, leaving Calvin alone to face an enraged Vivian and the crowd. And me, I just sat there, watching it all unfold. Revenge, it was smoother than I imagined. After Tiffany left, the tension in the cafe grew thicker. Vivian angrily pointed at Calvin. Tim, you're coming back with me. I won't go. Calvin cried, backing away. We have no feelings left. No feelings? Vivian laughed bitterly. Then why didn't you get a divorce? Why didn't you pay back my money? More and more people gathered, with some filming and posting online. Isn't this the homewrecker guy? Turns out he has a wife too, so this is double adultery. Guys today have no shame. Facing all the pointing and whispers, Calvin completely broke down. He rushed out of the cafe trying to escape. But just as Calvin ran into the mall's atrium, he was swarmed by a group of reporters. Calvin, any comments on ruining someone else's marriage? Do you admit to having a record of fraud? How are you going to handle your marriage with Vivian? Faced with the barrage of questions, Calvin was speechless. He tried to push through the crowd, but the reporters were too tightly packed. Just then, Tiffany appeared again. She pushed the reporters aside and grabbed Calvin's arm. "Come with me." Her voice was cold. "Tiffany." Calvin saw her, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. But her next words shattered that hope. "We're going to the registry office to get a divorce." "What?" Calvin couldn't believe it. "We aren't even married." "Stop pretending." Tiffany pulled out a photo. "This is the picture you took with me yesterday, claiming it was for memories. Now I realize you plan to use this photo to fool people into thinking we're married." In the photo, indeed, they were at the registry office holding red certificates. But it wasn't a marriage license, it was Tiffany's ID card. "Tiffany, this is a misunderstanding," Calvin tried to explain. "Enough." Tiffany's voice was loud. "Calvin, I see through you now. You're a complete fraud." With that, she let go of Calvin's arm and turned to leave. "We're done from today." Calvin wanted to follow her, but Vivian stopped him. "You aren't going anywhere." Vivian grabbed his wrist. "You owe me and you will pay." "I don't have any money," Calvin yelled. "No money?" Vivian sneered. "Then you'll pay in other ways." She then took some photos of a disheveled Calvin with her phone. "I'll post these online for everyone to see your true colors." "No." Calvin tried to grab the phone, but Vivian pushed him away. Watching this unfold, I figured it was time to step in. "Vivian, causing a scene like this isn't going to help," I said. "Billy?" Vivian turned to me, her attitude instantly respectful. "You're right. I should handle this legally." "Then call the cops," I suggested, pulling out my phone. "Calvin's got fraud and bigamy charges." Hearing about the cops, Calvin grew even more desperate. "Don't call the cops." He fell to his knees in front of me. "Billy, please, let me go." "Let you go?" I looked down at him. "Calvin, did you think about letting me go when you destroyed my marriage?" "I was wrong, really wrong," he pleaded. "I'll leave Tiffany and divorce Vivian. Just please, no cops." Too late. I had already dialed 911. "Hello, officer? I'd like to report a fraud and bigamy case." When Calvin heard I was calling the cops, he lost all hope. He slumped on the ground, staring blankly. The police arrived quickly. "Who called?" An officer asked. "Me." I showed my lawyer badge. "I'm Lawyer Billy, reporting this man for fraud and bigamy." The officer checked my ID and then gathered information. With Vivian's testimony and evidence, Calvin was soon taken away. Before leaving, he glanced back at me, eyes filled with hatred and despair. Yet I felt no sympathy. This was his well-deserved fate. Watching the police car leave, I sent a text to Tiffany. "The show's over. Your little lover's in jail. Satisfied?" Tiffany quickly replied, "Billy, you're ruthless." I chuckled at the text. Ruthless. This is just the beginning. My revenge wasn't yet complete. Next up was Tiffany herself. I took out my phone and called Lily. "Lily, phase 2 can start now." "Got it, Billy," Lily replied, sounding thrilled. "I promise Tiffany won't recover." After hanging up, I looked around the mall atrium. This was once where Tiffany kneeled for Calvin. Now, Calvin's in jail, and Tiffany's lost everything. And I'm still standing here. Winning feels pretty good. 3 days later, I got an unexpected call. It was Tiffany. "Billy, can we meet?" Her voice was frail. "There are things I need to tell you. What can't be said over the phone?" I shuffled through my papers, sounding indifferent. "I want to apologize in person," Tiffany said. "And I want to know, when did you start planning all this?" Hearing that, my interest was piqued. "All right, let's meet," I said, glancing at my watch. "Same place, W Mall Cafe, in an hour." "Okay." I hung up, straightened my shirt, and got ready to leave. An hour later, I showed up at the cafe on time. Tiffany was already there waiting. She looked worn out, her eyes bloodshot, likely from many sleepless nights. "Sit." I took a seat across from her. "Billy, I'm sorry." Tiffany's first words were an apology. "I know I hurt you. I know I did something unforgivable." "And?" I asked calmly. "I want to know, when did you start doubting me?" Tiffany looked into my eyes. "I thought I hid it well." I chuckled. "Tiffany, you think you hid it well? Didn't I?" I said, pulling out my phone. I hired a private detective to follow you 3 months ago. Tiffany's face went pale instantly. You knew all along? Not only do I know about you and Calvin, but I also know where you guys have your dates and when you rent rooms. I'm scrolling through my phone. Want to see some photos? Tiffany shook her head. She didn't need to see them. Why then? She wanted to ask why I agreed to the proposal. Why did I still want to marry you? I said the question for her. Because I needed a legal status to get everything from you. What do you mean? Tiffany, did you really think that stock transfer agreement was something you signed on impulse? I scoffed. It was a trap I carefully set up. Tiffany's eyes widened. Remember? I continued, after I rejected your first proposal, you met a fortune teller the next day. The fortune teller said you were destined to meet a man who would help your career soar, but you'd have to show absolute sincerity to win his heart. Tiffany's face grew more and more upset. That fortune teller? An actor I hired. I said calmly, the goal was to make you willingly sign that agreement. No way. Tiffany shook her head. There's no way you could have planned this deeply. Why not? I pulled out a document. This is a plan I drafted 3 months ago, from how to get you to sign the agreement, to how to collect evidence of your cheating, to how to bankrupt your company. Every step was written clearly. Tiffany took the document, and as she read it, her face looked worse and worse. The plan was frighteningly detailed, even predicting nearly perfectly when and where she'd be. Billy, why are you doing this? Tiffany's voice was shaky. We had 5 years of relationship. 5 years of relationship? I laughed. Tiffany, do you know when I stopped trusting you? When? 2 years ago, the first time you cheated. I looked at her shocked expression. Did you think it was just Calvin? Before him, there was your secretary, your client, and your gym coach. Tiffany's face turned completely pale. I knew about all of it. I continued. Each time I gave you a chance, hoping you'd confess. But every time you chose to hide and deceive. Billy, So, from that moment I started planning all of this. I interrupted her. 2 years was enough to spin a web. Tiffany slumped in her chair, eyes full of despair. Did you know about Calvin's affair, too? Of course. I nodded. His fraud history, his marriage to Vivian, I'm clear on all of it. I even know he approached you with an agenda. An agenda? He wanted to con you out of money. I took out another document. He owed a loan shark $3 million and needed a big sum quick to pay off his debt. So, he made up that fake design project trying to swindle money from you. Tiffany looked at the document, stunned. So, all along I was just a fool? She smiled bitterly. You finally realized. I stood up, ready to leave. Tiffany, this is the price of betrayal. Billy, wait. Tiffany stopped me. You've taken everything from me. Isn't that enough? Enough? I looked back at her. Tiffany, do you think a company's shares can make up for 5 years of my youth and 2 years of humiliation? What else do you want? I smiled at her. Tiffany, you'll find out soon enough. With that, I turned and left without a backward glance. Behind me, I heard Tiffany's anguished voice, but I didn't turn back, because the show was just beginning. The next morning, I was at the law firm handling paperwork when my assistant Thomas rushed in. Billy, something big happened. His face was tense. What's wrong? I put down my papers. Tiffany got arrested. Thomas said, for contract fraud involving a huge amount. Hearing this, I wasn't surprised. When did this happen? This morning, the police went straight to her house to arrest her. Thomas said, now all the major media are reporting it. I turned on the computer and saw the news. Former TF Group chairwoman Tiffany arrested for contract fraud. Case involves $50 million. The comments under the news were lively. Isn't this the cheating woman? Karma is a thing. Serves her right, people can't be so scummy. I closed the page and dialed Lily's number. Lily, the plan's going smoothly. Yes, Billy. Lily sounded pleased. Those contracts were indeed problematic, enough to keep Tiffany in jail for a few years. Those contracts? Tiffany signed them while she was seeing Calvin. To meet Calvin's demands, she took many unauthorized actions in several projects. And now those unauthorized actions are her evidence of guilt. But, Billy, are you really not going to defend her? Lily asked. You're a top-notch lawyer, after all. Defend her? I scoffed. Lily, Do you think I'd defend someone who betrayed me? Right, I wasn't thinking. Lily quickly apologized. Hanging up, I looked out at the blue sky. Tiffany, this is the price of choosing betrayal. That afternoon, I got an unexpected call. It was Tiffany's dad. Billy, please help Tiffany. He said over the phone. She's now in detention. You're a lawyer. You must be able to do something. I'm sorry, Uncle, I can't. I said calmly. Billy, I know Tiffany wronged you, but she's still your wife. For the sake of what we have, help her. For what we have. I scoffed. Uncle, did you think about that when your daughter cheated on our wedding day? I know Tiffany messed up, but she's already paid the price. The company's gone, her reputation's ruined. What more do you want? I want her to know some mistakes will cost you for life. I said bluntly. Billy, how did you become so heartless? Tiffany's dad sounded so disappointed. Heartless? Thinking of the humiliation over the past 2 years, I said, Uncle, I'm just trying to get the justice I deserve. Then I hung up the phone. A few days later, Calvin's case was concluded. He got sentenced to 3 years for fraud and bigamy. That night, I celebrated alone with some red wine at home. Then the doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, it was Tiffany's dad. He looked really worn out. Uncle? I was a bit surprised. What are you doing here? Billy, please save Tiffany. Tiffany's dad suddenly kneeled in front of me. I'm begging you, show some mercy. Seeing him like that, I felt a bit torn. After all, he'd always been good to me. Uncle, please get up. I helped him up. Let's talk inside. Tiffany's dad came in and sat on the couch, continuing to plead. Billy, Tiffany regrets everything every day in jail. She says she's sorry. She knows she was wrong. Knows she's wrong? I sat across from him. If apologies worked, then why would we need the law? Billy, I know you have the power to help her. Tiffany's dad grabbed my hand. If you defend her, she can get a sentence reduction. Seeing the hopeful look in Tiffany's dad's eyes, a thought popped into my mind. Uncle, I can defend Tiffany, I said. His eyes lit up instantly. Really? But there's a condition. I continued. What condition? Name it. I need Tiffany to admit all her mistakes in court in front of everyone. Cheating, betrayal, everything. I looked at Tiffany's dad. And she has to publicly apologize to me. Tiffany's dad hesitated. That's my condition. I said firmly. If she doesn't agree, I won't defend her. He thought about it and finally nodded in agreement. Okay, I'll talk to Tiffany. The next day, Tiffany's dad came back with her reply. She agreed to my terms. Looks like jail life truly scared her. I started preparing her defense. Of course, my goal wasn't to save her. I wanted her to admit her despicable acts in court, publicly. That kind of shame would hurt more than jail. Tiffany, you think you can escape? Even in court, I want you to pay. The court date arrived quickly. The courtroom was packed, not just the parties involved and lawyers, but heaps of reporters and onlookers. When Tiffany was brought in by the bailiffs, I watched her closely. She looked beaten down but still clung to a bit of hope. She clearly thought I was going to rescue her. Once court was in session, the prosecutor read the charges. Tiffany was accused of contract fraud, huge amounts, severe circumstances. If found guilty, she faced over 10 years in prison. It was my turn to speak, so I stood up. Your Honor, my client wishes to plead guilty. At those words, Tiffany snapped her head towards me, eyes wide with shock. But the strict court rules barred her from speaking. Please have the defendant stand. The judge ordered. Tiffany had no choice but to stand. Tiffany, do you admit to committing contract fraud? The judge asked. She glanced at me. I gave a slight nod. Yes, I admit it. Her voice was faint. Good. The judge continued. Now, are you willing to describe your crimes in court? At that moment, I stood up. Your Honor, my client wishes not only to describe the crimes but to publicly apologize to her husband here. The courtroom buzzed with chatter. Everyone knew about Tiffany's cheating scandal. A public apology was major news. Please proceed. The judge instructed. Tiffany took a deep breath and started. My name is Tiffany, and I committed contract fraud. Her voice rang clear in the room. But before the crime, I made even bigger mistakes. I betrayed my husband, Billy. Tiffany looked at me. Even on our wedding day, I was tangled up with another man. Reporters snapped away, cameras capturing it all. I lied to him, hurt him, betrayed his trust. Tiffany's voice began to tremble. For a scammer, I gave up a man who truly loved me. I knelt before a mistress in public, showered her with expensive gifts, even wanted to marry her. Tiffany started to cry. And meanwhile, my husband waited at home for me. Upon hearing this, people shook their heads. What a disgrace. Someone whispered. She had it coming, another said. Tiffany kept going, Billy, I'm sorry. I know it's late to say this, but I must. You're the best man in the world, and I'm the least deserving woman. She knelt on the courtroom floor. I failed your love, ruined your youth. I deserve this. Watching all this, I felt nothing. Those words came way too late. After order was restored, the judge continued with the trial. In the end, Tiffany was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Though I put up a defense for her, it was just for show. My real aim was for her to fess up to her vile acts in public. Exiting the courtroom, Tiffany's dad caught up to me. Billy, why did you do this? He asked angrily. You could have saved her. Uncle, I did defend her. I said calmly, 8 years is 2 years less than 10, that's the result of my defense. But you made her admit it in public. Tiffany's dad tried to speak, but I cut him off. Made her tell the truth in front of everyone? I looked at him. Uncle, do you think she shouldn't take responsibility for her actions? Tiffany's dad had nothing to say. He knew Tiffany was the one who wronged me first. After leaving the courtroom, I got a call from Lily. Billy, congrats on winning in the end, Lily said. The acquisition of TF Group's assets is complete, and you're now the biggest shareholder in our company. Thanks for your support, Lily, I replied. It's the least I could do, Lily said. So, Billy, what do you plan on doing next? I looked at the bustling crowd outside the courthouse and thought for a moment. I'm planning to go abroad for a bit, clear my mind. Sounds good, you definitely need a break, she agreed. I hung up and drove home. The house was quiet, just like it had been for the past 2 years. But the quiet now was different than before. Before, it was the painful quiet of waiting. Now it's the peaceful quiet of victory. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the city's nightscape. Tiffany, this is the price of betrayal.